Hi guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha and I am so blessed and so lucky to be a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So, if you guys are new to my channel, welcome or welcome back. We are only doing Vedic sidereal astrology over here, which is true to the actual placements of the stars in the sky. You can look up and see the alignment of the stars with the current astronomy. Okay, that is the sidereal aspect. The Vedic aspect is that Vedic astrology is ancient Hindu astrology that is coming from India. It's really connected to Vedic tradition, and it is the really predictive system of astrology. So, yeah, I studied Western astrology for so long, and it really just changed my entire life and my entire perception of reality and cycles and seasons when I did shift over into Vedic astrology. So I've studied both systems, and I can say with, full confidence that Vedic astrology is the system you really want to go to if you want to be accurate and predictive and really go deep in astrology. And I have an 8th house moon, so I need to go deep into things. Like, I can never be on the surface with anything. So Vedic astrology has always just really been the thing that changed everything for me in terms of my own connection to astrology in this lifetime. So I'm very, very grateful for that. All right, so now that we have that out of the way, we are going to go into a really in-depth Vedic chart analysis today of someone that is very important to me. So unfortunately, David Lynch did pass away recently, which was honestly very shocking. Just because David Lynch is one of those people that seems very eternal. He seems like he is just going to be around forever, you know what I mean? Because he has such that potent energy, and he feels so alive, and he feels, so electric, and so very jarring to have seen that. And I was definitely absolutely shocked and surprised. Pulling up his Dasha sequence, he is in a Marka time period, which is indication of death in Vedic astrology, which we'll get into. It's nothing to be scary, but you'll usually find when people do pass away, they are in the Dasha sequence that connects to their 2nd house or their 7th house. So we'll get into that a little bit at the end as well, too. I want to preface this video by saying that I've always had a really special connection to David Lynch for whatever reason. When I was younger, my original career path was actually to be a photographer and a film director. So since I was like 16 or 17, it was my biggest dream in life to do film direction and photography. And I was really an artist, more so when I was younger. And I really connected so much with David Lynch's films because I was like, oh, this is exactly the films that I've always wanted to see. I saw Mulholland Drive, and it was like, whoa, like this film is how my mind works. I was like watching this movie and I'm like, this is exactly how I see things and how I perceive things in this more non-linear, unconventional sort of elusive, open to the imagination, and also all these like interconnected, interwoven things within the films as well too. So there's a lot of depth and mystery to his films, which is something I've always loved so much about his films. And obviously he's just a very metaphysical, spiritual person. I've always been a super spiritual person as well too, so I always connected with that side of David Lynch as well. And then another strange sort of connection is when I was in New York and I was in art school, I actually stumbled into a transcendental meditation center in Brooklyn. And I was going to school at the time, and I was really involved in like film and photography. And I was going through Sati Sati, and I was going through Sati Sati. Like, I was in the depths of Sati Sati, and I stumbled into this transcendental meditation center, and I had no idea that it was in any way connected to David Lynch. I didn't know anything about it. And I started practicing transcendental meditation at a time when, like, Lord knows I needed it. Like, Lord knows. In the mix of Sati Sati, in a Rahu Dasha, like, I needed it more than anything at that time. And it's so wild how the universe will just lead you to things when you need them the most, you know? So I stumbled into this TM center, and then lo and behold, I find out later that like David Lynch is so connected and so involved in transcendental meditation, and he has a foundation, and he's really connected to Bob Roth, who's, you know, the main sort of TM guy in LA. So really strange connections, and I just thought it was so funny. I was like, I've always loved David Lynch so much, and now I end up in his, you know, transcendental meditation web of connection. Like, it was so interesting. And today we actually did a group meditation at the TM Center that was, you know, kind of honoring David Lynch as well too. So yeah, that's just a little personal story of like my connections and my love for David Lynch. And I've just always loved him so much. Like, so many of my friends texted me like, oh my God, we know that you loved him. So yeah, I just really always connected with his eccentricities and the way he sort of viewed the world, and, you know, his film, and it just felt like something that was so connected to how I viewed things in that way. So yeah, I've always loved his sort of non-linear way of viewing things, and his thought processing when it comes to his art as well too. So just a little backstory. I feel like I had to share that little aspect. I feel like most people see me now and don't know about like that part of my life where I was very much an artist and really obsessed with film and photography, and, you know, went to art school and all that sort of stuff. So before this career path, that was really a huge part of my life, and I've always loved David Lynch so much. So yeah, and also, by the way, you know, this is kind of random, but also really connected as well too, as transcendental meditation is also something that really changed, you know, my entire life. And I feel so blessed and so lucky to have found that form of meditation as well too. So if anyone's like ever curious about it, it is absolutely the best form of meditation that I've ever found. So much love for TM as well too. And David was very, very connected in the TM world as well. All right, done rambling. My Gemini rising is done rambling, guys. I'm going to pull up David Lynch's Vedic astrological charts, and we are going to go into in-depth analysis. And yeah, I think his chart is very, very interesting, because he has one of those charts where we kind of have to dig deeper to find the true essence of what's going on, right? Some charts, you see them and they scream at you, and it's so obvious, and it's like, this is an artist, this is a famous artist, right? David has one of those charts where it takes you a second to really start grasping and unraveling like what's going on, but once you start seeing it, you're like, oh, okay, I see what's happening. So it'll be interesting to do that sort of analysis as well too. All right, without further ado, let's pull up David's Vedic astrological chart. All right, guys, let's go into David's chart analysis. I feel like I'm holding like a gem in my precious light right now. I'm like, oh, this is a magical chart. Okay. All right, so let's start with David's ascendant. So he does have Jupiter on his ascendant, and his ascendant is Libra. All right. You'll see a lot of famous artists, well-known artists are going to have a Libra ascendant, just because, you know, it's ruled by Venus, right? So that means their whole life and their whole chart is ruled by the energy of Venus, which is the karaka or the indicator of the arts, right? Of beauty, of aesthetics, right? Like, of course, an artist is going to have a chart that's completely ruled by the energy of Venus. Okay. And what's really interesting about David's astrological chart as well too is he has Jupiter on the ascendant. It's not the tightest conjunction because Jupiter is 3 degrees, his ascendant is 25 degrees. So it's not like he has Jupiter right there conjunct on his ascendant, but he still has that Jupiter energy sitting there, which gives that expansion, which gives, you know, good luck, which gives blessing, which gives spirituality, which gives that energy of Jupiter, philosophy, right? So if you see Jupiter on the first house, you're going to find that those people are usually very open-minded. They're very philosophical. They're very spiritual. They also have some sort of luck in this lifetime as well, too. So they're pretty protected as well. If you see Jupiter on the ascendant and their ascendant isn't like super negatively, poorly aspected, otherwise, you'll find that those people will go throughout life with a good sort of blessed and lucky energy, right? And when you watch David Lynch's videos, he's always talking about philosophy and spirituality, and he's always open and he's open-minded, and that's the energy of Jupiter right there on the first house on the ascendant. All right. So because his ascendant is ruled by Venus, let's go over to his Venus, which is in the 4th house of Capricorn conjunct the sun. So we get a really tight Venus-Sun conjunction, which actually gives us the energy of Venus combusts the sun because they are so tight in degree orb conjunction as well too. So Venus is 3 degrees, 44 seconds. The sun is 6 degrees, 39 seconds. That's a really tight degree orb of conjunction. Okay, so we have Sun conjunct Venus, which means, Sun is the soul. It's the energy of who we are at our core. It's our ego, and it's conjunct Venus, which is the karaka for arts and creativity and beauty and harmony, right? So Venus-Sun conjunction in itself and being the chart ruler is going to show that a huge theme of his life is always going to be Venus, which is the arts, which is creativity, which is beauty, harmony, women. It's said that Venus combusts Sun, or when Sun comes together really tightly in conjunction with Venus, that the person is very creative, very artistic, but can have issues with relationships. And all of those things are very true for David Lynch. I think he had 4 marriages. And they also say that Venus combusts Sun is an energy where the person has like one initial relationship that's really strong, and it can affect the trajectory of the rest of their relationships as they go throughout their life. So I remember reading that he had this wife initially when he was younger, and I believe they had children together, and then that marriage ended, and he had like 3 other wives after that, and I believe he had a few affairs, things of that nature. So that's the energy of Venus combusts Sun, and Sun-Venus energy so tightly in a conjunction. And his 7th house lord is pretty afflicted. He has 3 malefics getting disposited by his 7th house lord. So 7th house of Aries gets ruled by Mars. Then we see Mars, Saturn, Rahu, all in that 7th house lord. And Venus is the wife in the man's chart, and it's conjunct the sun, which can be overt energy. It can burn it out. So his Venus is having good energy for creativity. Yes, absolutely, especially because it's aspecting the 10th house of career by opposition, but it does give issues around marriage, because the Sun and Venus, you'll find, don't do well together when it comes to marriage, because the Sun is too much, right? It's too bright, it's too much energy. When it comes together with Venus, which is women and the karaka for the wife and the man's chart, it's like too much energy going there. So that's too much. What is too much? That is like 4 marriages and affairs and things of that nature, right? So we've seen both of those things manifest in David's life and in his chart. Okay, what's very interesting as well too is, Venus with the Sun in the 4th house of home and family. A lot of his, work and his creative pieces are very inspired by his home and his family and his upbringing, and it's in that 4th house of the home as well too. So Venus Sun, he definitely had some sort of mixed energy around his childhood. Venus is there, so it was creative in some way, and then the Sun is there, so there was some malefic influence as well too, which, I believe I read that he grew up at first like in the quiet suburbs, and then they moved around, and then he saw a lot of interesting things. So he had both that Venus and Sun energy in his upbringing, in his home life, and his family life of the benefic and the malefic influence as well too. You'll find that if someone has like 1 benefic and 1 malefic in a house, we're going to get mixed results, meaning that they can have good and bad come with it, right? Which is how life is. We get good and then we get bad, and it's not so simplistic. It's not so black and white. So if we get 1 malefic and 1 benefic in a house, we can get good and bad that come into that energy. So, artistic, creative inspiration in his upbringing, his home, his family life, and then 1 malefic, there's definitely some issues at times as well too. Okay, so because Venus is in his 4th, conjunct the Sun, which, the Sun is leadership, Venus is creativity, it is directly aspecting his 10th house of his career, right? So Venus Sun is aspecting the 10th, bringing all of that energy of creativity and the arts, and then the Sun is leadership and working for oneself, and it's going into direct opposition to the 10th house of career. Okay, so that's like a direct 100% power aspect onto the 10th. And then the 10th house happens to be Cancer, which means it gets disposited by the moon, okay? So this is very interesting. So his 10th house lord, because his 10th house is Cancer, ruled by the moon, gets disposited by the 11th house, okay? So the 11th house is the house of great gains. The 11th house is the house of, a social network, tons of people, friendships, groups, organizations, and a few things there. One, his 10th house is disposited by the moon, which the moon is the public, the moon is the masses, so his career connects to the public and the masses in some way. Two, the moon is the subconscious, the moon is the intuitive, so it also shows that his whole career gets ruled by intuition and subconscious sort of, mysterious energy as well too with that moon, okay? And then another thing is you'll find when the 10th house gets ruled by the moon, there's something around like guidance as well too, and he's a film director, right? So he's guiding people, he's showing people how to act essentially in his career, so there's that moon energy as well. 11th house is the house of great gains, so he gets great financial gains from his career. Moon is the public, he's in the public. The 11th house is also groups and organizations, and the moon is wanting to help or nurture in some way as well too, and he's given a lot of his life to the TM movement and the TM organization, okay? That's that 10th house lord in the 11th with the moon. Also, the 11th house is friends and powerful people as well too, and I can guarantee you guys his career has been full of powerful people. He works with the top actors in the world. He works with some of the richest, most successful, talented people. A lot of his friends are vastly successful, vastly famous. That's that 10th house getting disposited by the 11th house of great gains, powerful people, organizations, friendships, groups in that regard as well too. And then the moon is in the Magha nakshatra, and Magha is all about leadership. Magha is the king essentially, so it also brings that like creative, powerful leadership energy as well too, which to be a film director you have to be powerful, you have to be able to lead as well, right? So that's that moon in the 11th house. So nurturing is also very important in his career, even though he was a great director. If you watch videos of him behind the scenes, he was also very kind and very nurturing and sweet a lot of the times as well too. So that's the energy of the moon. 10th house disposited by the moon can also show he had a special connection to women in his work as well too. All right, so that's analyzing that 10th house, right? We get Sun, Venus on that 10th in direct opposition, which is creativity, which is beauty, which is harmony. Sun is leadership onto that 10th house lord disposited by the moon, the masses, the public. Sitting in the 11th house of great gains, organizations, groups, friendships, etc. So those were all themes of his career. Okay? Now, let's hop over to his 12th house because I find this very interesting. So we see Neptune sitting in his 12th. So Neptune rules the subconscious, the dream state, that sort of spiritual, metaphysical world, and it sits in his 12th house. 12th house rules meditation, 12th house rules moksha, 12th house also rules film, photography, and television, okay? So we have Neptune, which is all things elusive, subconscious, illusionary, spiritual, sitting in his 12th house of film, photography, television, and meditation. So we get that Neptune energy into that 12th house, and then his 12th house gets disposited by Mercury, and Mercury goes into his 3rd house. So 12th house of the dreams, the subconscious, the spiritual, that moksha, metaphysical energy, goes into the 3rd house. What is the 3rd house, guys? The 3rd house is the creative house in Vedic astrology. Okay? One of my teachers, James Braha, who if you guys know Vedic astrology, you know James. He would tell us that if he was going to pick a house for the arts and it was between the 3rd house or the 5th house, he would pick the 3rd house over the 5th house. And the more that I do charts and the more that I analyze, artistic charts, I would definitely have to agree that the 3rd house is truly that house of the arts and creativity and acting and performing and writing, all of that sort of energy, okay? So we're getting Neptune in the 12th, getting disposited by the 3rd house of the arts, of writing, of creativity, right? 3rd house is going to be more of that like physical talent. It can be using the hands, it can be writing, painting, drawing. And David Lynch started as a painter, and he started, as an artist in more tangible fields as well too, but also he's written all his films and his screenplays. That is, that 12th house energy of the subconscious, the spiritual, Moshka, film, photography, television, going into the 3rd house of writing, the arts, creativity, okay? And then this is such a spot-on energy in David's chart. When I saw this, I started laughing because I was like, he is so K2 Mercury in the 3rd house. So we'll talk about that. So 12th house Lord, film, photography, television, subconscious, the dream world is getting disposited by his 3rd house of writing, the arts, all things creative, right? It's bringing that energy into this house. The way that we have to understand like house dispositors or house lordship energy is imagine that where this house sits, it's like it's bringing its energy into this house. So, for example, okay, let's say we have 12th house into the 3rd house. It's bringing all the themes of the 12th into the 3rd. It's connecting them. It's almost like, think about like Lord house rulerships as like a roommate coming to move into your apartment and they're bringing something with them into that apartment. Right? Like, let's say your roommate is very 12th house, like they love all things film, photography, spiritual, subconscious, the dream world. And they're like, hey, I'm moving in. And they're moving into your 3rd house, and your 3rd house is writing, creativity. It's bringing that energy with it wherever it goes, okay? That's like something that I literally just came up with on the spot right now. So don't hold that to me too much. Okay. So then we have Mercury conjunct K2 in the 3rd house, okay? So Mercury is a benefic. K2 is Moshka. K2 is strange, guys. K2 is a void. K2 is film. K2 is photography. K2 is gas, oil, magic, drugs, illusions. And it's bringing all of that energy with Mercury, which Mercury is writing and speech and expression and communication. Okay. When you watch David Lynch speak, he speaks so much like Mercury K2 in the 3rd house, okay? K2 is strange, it's elusive, it's illusionary, it's kind of confusing. When you watch him speak in interviews, he's very like, he just speaks in such a K2-like way, right? K2 is that sort of spiritual, strange energy. So, okay, all his films, all the films that he's written, all of his art is so K2 Mercury in the 3rd house. Mercury is a karaka or an indicator that connects already to that 3rd house. So you see Mercury in the 3rd, it absolutely gives talent around writing and creativity, okay? And then we're getting K2 in conjunction with that. K2 is bringing its energy of spirituality, of strangeness, of elusive energy into Mercury. So how does he speak? He speaks, very strangely. His writing is very strange. It's very eccentric. It's very spiritual, right? It's Mercury K2. He has all these like really funny videos where he would do those weather reports. That is Mercury conjunct K2 in the 3rd house, if I've ever seen it. All right. And Mercury in the 3rd gives writing ability. And then K2 is like these strange sort of innate gifts that we bring with us from past lives, if you want to see it like that. So he has some sort of gifts around writing, around expression, okay? And it's in that 3rd house of the arts, of the creative, of all things artistic, okay? And Mercury K2 can give some like detachment at times from the speech. So it can come across sometimes when people speak and they have Mercury K2, they're speaking and you're kind of like, what? Like, what did that person say? Right? It's not always the most clear or concise speech because it's K2. K2 is strange, okay? K2 is like this weird spiritual void energy, when it comes together with Mercury, it gives a lot of creative, innovative, speaking and creative ideas and writing ability and talent, but it's not going to be the most clear, concise energy. Okay. And then we have the nodal axis tied up in the 3rd house, 9th house, and then we have Saturn and Mars aspecting this 3rd house in opposition as well too. So it's kind of interesting. Saturn on Mercury also gives writing ability, and it's in a pretty tight degree orb of conjunction. Mars on Mercury can give, really strong opinions, strong viewpoints, strong beliefs. So it's actually good to get that Mars energy on Mercury when it comes to someone who's going to be doing, film direction. They need to be pretty clear on their vision, very set on things as well too. Also, Saturn-Mars conjunct in the 9th will give the energy where someone is very driven, very motivated. Saturn-Mars is a very motivated, driven energy when it comes in conjunction, okay? And because his nodal axis is all tied up with the 3rd house, 9th house, what comes very naturally to him is the 3rd house, all things creative, all things around writing, all things around expression, all things around, creativity. It's very innate for him, okay? And then Rahu is in the 9th, so he's learning about spirituality, around religion, around his own beliefs and viewpoints and ideologies and different cultures. And what I find very interesting is Rahu, Saturn, Mars in the 9th house. There's definitely a lot of karma between him and his father was definitely a very powerful sort of figure in his life. And when I looked into this more, I was like, okay, there's, 3 malefic energies in the 9th, but also Saturn is Yogacaraka for Libra ascendant. So we're getting mixed results with the father, where the father could be powerful, the father could be very moralistic, the father could be strict, the father could be disciplined, but he could also, instill this energy where he kind of is scary at times or very quick to anger as well too. Okay. And so I was kind of confused by that 9th house energy where I was like, which one is it? And so this is very interesting. So I want to show you guys how interesting Jyotisha is when it comes to specific energy. Okay. So when we look up, David Lynch's relationship with his father, it shows that he was very scared of his father because his father could be very, strict with his words or very critical, but also he really looked up to his father and they had a pretty positive relationship. So isn't that interesting how it's both things in the Vedic chart, right? I was like, which one is it going to be? And it's actually both, okay? So it says he described his father as super fair and really pure. However, Lynch also said his father's words of disappointment could be intimidating. Guys, if that's not Saturn in the 9th, I don't know what is, okay? Saturn is already the Karaka for the father. Saturn is discipline, structure, order, restrictions. Saturn is literally the energy of strict father energy, and it's in the 9th house of the father. And he said his father was, could be very intense with his disappointing words. That is that Saturn in the 9th house with 3 malefic. So it's giving some sort of mixed results as well too. So I thought that was very interesting. I was like, man, there's 3 malefics, but Saturn is Yogacaraka. It's in the 9th house of father. Rahu's there. The father's powerful. He's definitely very powerful. And then we get Saturn, which is strictness, and Mars, which is friction as well too. So all things were true for him. It wasn't one, it wasn't the other, it was all, okay? Because again, life is very complex. It's not black and white. It's always very dualistic in that way. There's a lot of different things going on at once. Okay. So what's very interesting as well too is Rahu in the 9th house, Saturn is Yogacaraka, Mars is there. He's very motivated towards philosophy, religion, spirituality, right? He's very much this philosophical seeker in this lifetime as well too. And we see that with all the energy active in the 9th house. Okay. And then also very interesting to see some aspects. So I found this very, very interesting. This is kind of like a sneaky little thing that we're going to see in the chart. This is one of those things where it's like, unless you really know Jyotisha, you're not going to pick up on this. But I want to show you guys something very interesting. So K2 is in his 3rd house. K2 is film, photography, television, strange, moshka, spiritual, okay? And I was thinking, and I was like, I feel like K2 has to have some connection to David Lynch's 10th house. So I was like, there's going to be some K2 energy going into his 10th or aspecting his 10th, and I couldn't really quite figure it out. But then I was really analyzing, and I got it. So, okay, watch this. So he has K2 in the 3rd, right? K2 creates special aspects. It goes 5 and 9 houses away. All right, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Goes on to his 7th. He attracts strange, elusive, spiritual film, photography, television partners. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So K2 goes on to his moon and goes on to his 10th house lord. Okay. So it's bringing the energy of K2 onto his moon, which the moon is the mind, the subconscious. K2 moon people are very spiritual. They're very intuitive. They're very psychic. They're very in the metaphysical world. But also it's his 10th house lord. So it's bringing that K2 energy into his 10th house lord dispositor. So it brings, film, photography, television, illusions, the other world, the spiritual world, into his 10th house, because it conjuncts, basically like a conjunction when K2 aspects planets by its 5-9 aspect into his 10th house lord. Okay? So David Lynch has a lot of K2 energy in his chart. K2 with Mercury. K2 is strange. It's elusive. It's illusionary. Okay? However, he does have Rahu aspecting his Jupiter on his ascendant as well, too. So Rahu's in the 9th. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pretty tight conjunction with his natal Jupiter on the 1st house. So Rahu aspecting his 1st, Jupiter aspecting his 1st gives expansion to his personality and his ability to be seen and be confident and be a leader as well in this lifetime. Okay, so that's Rahu's aspect onto Jupiter on the 1st. And it does go on to his 5th as well, too. And then his 5th house lord is there's 3 malefics with his 5th house lord. So David definitely had some issues with his children. And I was kind of curious about what was going on there. And he did say in an article, in a quote, that he wasn't the best at being a father. That's because he has some afflictions on his 5th house of children, right? He has Rahu there. His 5th house lord is pretty afflicted with 3 malefics. There's going to be some issues with children, so he did say he wasn't a natural father in this lifetime, so that's very interesting as well, too. And yeah, he has a lot of K2 energy onto that Mercury into the 3rd house, so it brings all that sort of elusive, spiritual, strange energy into his personal planetary energy as well, too, which is great for his strange spiritual films, right? Which is great for his meditation. K2 is detachment. K2 is the energy that we're looking for moksha, for enlightenment, for meditation, for all of those themes, okay? And then in his D9 Navamsha, he has Venus conjunct Sun sitting right there in the 10th house, right? Which means creative career, which means a career of working with his own energy for himself, right? That would be film direction, being a film director and an artist, all of those themes. And then this is very interesting. So when he went into, I believe, okay, so let's pull up his dashas for a second. Okay, so let's see. I want to look up when he got famous, because I want to know what dasha sequence that was. When did David Lynch? Okay, so he became famous around 1977 after his film Eraserhead. Okay, so in his dashas, that would be his Saturn, his moon Saturn dasha. All right, so let's pull up, 1977. I just want to kind of see what was going on if he was in a Saturn moon. Saturn is Yogacaraka for Libra ascendant, so it means that they can have a lot of power when they go into a Saturn dasha because it is their Yogacaraka, or their strongest planet, meaning it rules powerful houses. And then his moon is in the 11th house, which is great gains. Then his 10th house gets disposited by his 11th, so great financial gains and recognition. The moon is the masses, so he got fame in a Saturn moon dasha, which highlights his 9th house, Yogacaraka, and then highlights his 3rd house. His 11th house, which is great gains, and the moon in the 11th is the masses as well, too. And then it's his 10th house dispositor. So that makes a lot of sense, right? Yogacaraka is the most powerful planet for his ascendant. So in a Saturn dasha, he can have a lot of power in that time period. And then in his D9 Navamsha, his moon is in the 3rd house and is in its own sign of Cancer. Okay, so that's also what was going on when he was in a Saturn moon dasha. It highlighted his really strong moon in the 3rd. 3rd house is creativity, 3rd house is the arts, and moon is in its own sign in the 3rd house. So that's why he had so much power in that dasha time period. And you wouldn't normally think that like a Saturn dasha is going to bring all these amazing results, but the reason it did is because of that Yogacaraka energy. So you always want to see like what is Yogacaraka for what ascendant, because it's going to bring power in that dasha or in that time period as well too. Okay, and then when it comes to his passing, he was in a Saturn dasha. Okay, now this is very interesting. So there's something in Vedic astrology called Marka or killer houses. Okay, so what it means is that houses 2 and 7 are said to be the Markas. So when someone goes into the dasha that activates the 2nd house or the 7th house, it can bring the energy of death if they are around the age when it is likely for that to happen. Okay? We never predict death in Vedic astrology ever. Never, never, never. But if someone is older in age and we go back to see the time period that they did pass, they will more often than not be in the dasha sequence that highlights a Marka house or the 2nd house, 7th house, which are the Markas in Vedic astrology. Okay? Now, this is very interesting. So, first of all, Saturn in itself rules the energy of longevity, of life, right? Saturn can be death. Saturn can be endings to things, restrictions, right? Saturn in his chart is Yogacaraka, yes, but it is surrounded by malefics. So we see Rahu, Saturn, Mars, all conjunct. So it does bring around more malefic energy. And this is how it connects to the Marka houses or the killer houses in Vedic astrology. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit more high level, complicated Vedic astrology stuff. A lot of people might not make any sense of this. So just follow along, just listen. You'll maybe absorb something. Okay, so his Saturn is in the 9th. So a few things. One, his Saturn is pretty afflicted because Saturn is with 1 malefic, 2 malefics, and then aspected by the nodal axis, right? Another thing is that in his D9 Navamsha, Saturn is in the 2nd, which is a Karka, or the Marka, which is the killer house as well too. So that 2nd house gets lit up around this time period, which is known to be the killer house in Vedic astrology. Okay. And then Saturn is, already that energy of restrictions, and it's surrounded by a lot of malefics as well too. Okay, this is what I was looking for. Okay, I got it. So his 2nd house is Scorpio in his D1. So 2nd house is the Marka, the house of, killing in Vedic astrology, and then it gets disposited by Mars in the 9th in conjunction with Saturn. So it shows us that in the Saturn time period, that sort of energy is already lit up. So the 2nd house is the ruler of Mars, and he's in a Saturn-Mars time period with Saturn and Mars very close in conjunction. Okay. Then in his D9 Navamsha, the Marka being the 2nd house is also conjuncting Mars, a malefic, right? And then it's conjuncting Saturn in the 2nd, which is that Marka house. So the Marka house, the 2nd house, gets lit up twice, okay? And because he has so much malefic influence in connection to the 2nd house, that is things that we ingest and put into our body. So when we get malefic influence onto the 2nd house, it shows ingesting poisons, substances. Someone has to be careful of what they put into their body, right? And it was said that he smoked a lot, and it was very much connected to his lungs. Okay? That's all that malefic energy connected to the 2nd of what we put into our body. Substances, addiction, smoking, things like that can really be negative for charts that are more poorly afflicted by the 2nd house or 2nd house lord. All right, so that 2nd house, Marka house, gets lit up in the D1 by the 2nd house lord being in the 9th with Saturn Mars conjunct in a Saturn dasha. and also in the D9 Navamsha just by Saturn sitting in the second, which is that Marika or killer house in the D9 Navamsha. And then it's conjunct Mars, a malefic. So we see Saturn conjunct Mars in the D1 and the D9. So when he goes into a Saturn dasha, we have two malefics in conjunction, in connection to the second house, which is Marika or killer, but also which rules what we ingest and put into our body, which would rule things like smoking, excessive drinking, substances, things like that as well too. All right, so that was a in-depth dive into David Lynch's Vedic astrological chart. All very interesting. He has one of those charts that, again, I feel like I had to really dig deeper into it to see everything upon first glance. I was like, this is interesting. Okay. And then I started unraveling it more and more, and it's like, oh, okay. Got it. He has a lot of very strong K2 influence onto his planet, so that's what gives him that really spiritual, K2 film photography, elusive energy. Meditation is very much K2. K2 is detachment. All right? And he was just such an innovative, creative, individualistic, authentic person, and I just have so much love for him, always have, and always will. And I think what's so cool about, times when you can reflect on someone's legacy or what they left behind in the world is it makes you ponder your own legacy and what you are going to leave behind in this world, right? Because when we're no longer in our physical form, what we leave is really all that matters, right? So whether it's leaving, love or connection or purpose or some sort of creative project, who knows, whatever you're meant to do in your dharma and your purpose, it's so cool to know that that is truly the purpose of life, is to leave something behind that when we're not here in the physicals can still be felt, right? And David Lynch, really fulfilled that purpose. He left these amazing creative projects, but he also left this really strong connection to meditation. It's I'm down at my Transcendental Meditation Center and we're all connecting to David Lynch because he was so connected to the TM movement. So it's just really cool, right? It's he left so much behind, and he can be so proud of that legacy and what he did and what he accomplished in his lifetime. It's so cool through astrology to know someone's dharma, to know their purpose, and then to watch people who actually really live out their purpose. That is so beautiful and so rare. A lot of people are so scared of stepping into their purpose and their path, and so they stay on a more traditional trajectory and they don't ever actually go take those risks and do the things that other people might think are crazy. Imagine the reaction I got when I was like, yeah, I'm going to drop out of school and become an astrologer. Yeah, that seems absolutely insane. But it's in my purpose. It's in my dharma. It's in my karma. It's in my Vedic astrological chart. So it's just like that. It's just like that. We all have a different purpose. And, something that I'm always really impressed by is anyone who is walking their own unique individualistic path in this lifetime. And David Lynch absolutely did that. All right. So, one more thing I do want to say is he has Sun, Venus in the fourth, and the fourth house is the seat of the soul. So to have a lot of energy in the fourth house, you'll find people that are very heart-centered, because they lead from their hearts, and also they have this sort of really strong connection to their soul and their soul evolution and Moshka energy as well too, because the fourth house is a Moshka house as well. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth chart analysis. Comment, like, and subscribe for more content coming soon. Sending all the love. We'll talk soon, guys. Bye.